Let's talk about osteoporosis. I know that word. I've heard that in lots of commercials. Osteoporosis, what is it?
Osteoporosis is a bone disease that develops when bone mineral density and bone mass decrease, or also when the structure and strength of bone changes. So ultimately, what does that mean? It can lead to an increased risk of fractures.
Okay, all right. So it's thinner bones, less dense bones.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a silent disease, so you really don't know you have symptoms until you break
there's
a bone.
A problem.
Yeah, or obviously get screened for it. But yeah, that's really whenever you would notice a quote unquote symptom.
Okay, so why does it happen? I mean, I don't want to maybe if we know why it happens, we can anticipate who should be looking out for this.
Yeah, I think that the most or a very critical part of just understanding how osteoporosis can develop is understanding how the bones work.
Okay.
And what they're doing in your body. So the term is bone remodeling. So I think a key thing to remember, I don't know, maybe going way back for me before I took pharmacy and A&P classes, that you would think bones are pretty static.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They're not, but there's a lifelong process going on of bone remodeling. And that's where interventions come in. That's where hormones come in, all those different things. So I kind of want to start with that.
So your bones are continuing to grow all of the time? Is that just, you're saying remodeling, so they're not getting bigger?
Right. It's not so much about growth. That's why the term is remodeling. So again, it's a lifelong process. Mature bone, so bones that are done growing.
Right.
Some of the tissue is removed from the skeleton, from the bone. That's called bone resorption, resorbing it from the bone into the bloodstream. New bone tissue is formed. Also in this process, that's called ossification.
Okay. So your bone cells are literally replacing themselves constantly.
Yes.
That makes sense. I guess I just didn't think about it in those terms.
But yes. And it's occurring, obviously, following an injury, like a fracture.
Sure.
But it's also occurring during micro damage, just normal activity. It's also occurring due to demands on the body, mechanical loading, any stress that's on the body, on the bones. That's your body's response to it. Dante will go into that in a lot more depth, I'm sure, but that's really it's your body's response to changes. Okay,
so if that's how it's supposed to work, what happens in osteoporosis? I assume that process is interrupted somehow.
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap up, in adults, 10% of remodeling, 10% of the bone is remodeled every year. Well, osteoporosis is a result of an imbalance in those two processes. So you've got bone resorption, bone formation. Osteoporosis, again, is a result of that, an imbalance in those two processes. And again, because the body is in multiple different areas is trying to maintain homeostasis.
Right.
It's essentially just trying to an internal state of balance related to its own system. So bones are trying to do that as well, not just like I mentioned with more physical stimuli, but also related to calcium levels.
Okay.
All right. So again, just to kind of back up a little bit, we've got osteoblasts. Those are the cells that secrete the new bone. Osteoclasts break it down. So blast or increasing, class or decreasing is the most simple way to put it. It involves hormones like estrogen, parathyroid hormone, vitamin D, growth hormone, steroids, all those things. Also some immune cells. And related to the calcium, so again, bone remodeling is not just occurring during damage of a bone or stress on the bone. There is response to calcium blood levels.
Okay.
And just again, a quick recap, calcium's involved in muscle movement of blood through blood vessels, nerve conduction, hormone release, clotting, heart rhythms, all those things. So when the body, for whatever reason, is low in calcium, that's part of its quote unquote reservoir that it can access the calcium from the bone.
Oh, wow. Okay. That makes sense. So it literally pulls that. I know when I give platelets, sometimes it messes with your blood calcium levels because of the process, and they give you Tums because your jaw starts to hurt somehow. And so the Tums cut that out. Is that I assume that's the same thing?
It's a similar, going on there. Yeah, absolutely.
They're taking a lot of blood from you, I guess.
Well, no, I know it's something to do with an anticoagulant that they use to make sure that you don't stop up while they're doing the process. But I think it pulls from your jaw first, is where it first pulls that out, is what I heard.
Interesting.
I don't know.
We'd have to confirm that.
Yeah,
That's what a phlebotomist said. Okay.
I'm sure
I don't
they
know.
know. I mean, I would trust them. I'm sure they know quite a bit about blood.
All I know is the Tums makes it feel better. So the end.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a new one to me.
But yeah, I think that's a good point, if I may.
Yeah.
Is that we talk a lot about hormones and different feedback mechanisms found in the body. We've talked a lot about, male sex hormones, female hormones, and how it's not just this process with hormones that's occurring in a vacuum. It's very much a system-wide, system-wide thing that's going on. And so, you look at somebody who has maybe hyperparathyroid, that sets off a cascade of, increased calcium in the blood. And, that would be something, for example, that you look at when you're ultimately evaluating somebody who might be osteopenic or osteoporosis. But the point is that there's this whole feedback mechanism that allows the body to pull calcium from the bone, like Joey referred to as a reservoir.
Yeah.
To contribute to the other important functions.
Yeah. To keep you alive until you can store it back up again.
And then of course, ultimately the status of your bones pay a price for, flaws in that mechanism.
Makes sense. And it's a delicate balance. There's a whole lot going on there. And when you mess with one portion of it, it can affect all kinds of things downstream that it's hard to anticipate how much and to what degree.
Yep. And we'll get into it, but even just looking at osteopenia and osteoporosis, it's more than even just the, as I'm sure Joey's going to get to, it's more than just the calcium.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are many things that it's a bone disease. So if you think about that, at the outset, it's more than just the, decalcification. There's things that happen to the microarchitecture. There are different parts of the bone that have more ultimate, downstream effects from this. So